It is not enough to talk about mental health. The work is only half done, even when actions are taken. Mindfully with Tumisha, the podcast is putting her mouth where her money is. This November, join us at a Fight for Life as we bring support, awareness, and hope to people who need it the most. Here at Mindfully with Tumisha, we believe that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. So join this crucial fight for life, an event dedicated to raising awareness about men's health and preventing the silent epidemic of suicide. November 23, 2024 at the Rembrandt Hotel, Ikeja. Follow Mindfully with Tumishe for details about registration. Hi, Mindful Partners. It's Tumishe here again. And I am solo. And trust me, it is for a good reason. If you've been following Mindfully with Tumishe over the past year, maybe you have come across my diary of a bipolar, my musings as I journey through and navigate through living with bipolar affective disorder. You will know that my goal with sharing my stories and other people's stories is to remind us that we are all in this together. All right. Mental health has always been part of our narratives as Africans, even when we didn't have the lexicon or the language or the words to describe it. This year alone, I've had two psychiatrists on the show, a lady and a man. Dr. Kenneth and Dr. Muji, they were on the show, and I asked them if they thought mental health solutions were too Western. Their answers were unequivocally yes, but they did emphasize that we need to begin to contextualize mental health within the African space. Dr. Kenneth particularly referred me to search for the friendship bench in Zimbabwe. This is a homegrown mental health therapy. Imagine elderly women in quiet corners of community clinics, churches, and poor neighborhoods offering their wisdom and guidance to younger women in the community. It is very beautiful and, to be honest, very cultural. It culturally resonated with me when I saw some of these videos online. I'll add the link in the show notes of the two episodes I'm talking about with Dr. Kenneth and Dr. Muji. If you missed that episode or just want to catch up with Mindfully with Machine. So, here's what's going on with me lately. I've been diving into stories. If you've heard me speak lately, whether on TV or I'm in any fora, I'm always going on and on about the stories of origin, because I believe that understanding your story of origin and my story of origin, it would give me a clearer picture of how to navigate whatever is going on in my brain, in my life, trying to understand how we lost touch with our ways of addressing mental health, if we did at all. And what did you know now? Two movies gave me new insights. These are stories that have been with me almost all of my life. And it reignited the nature versus nurture debate in my mind. But before I go into what came up for me as I watched these two stories again, okay, I shared my thoughts with Denrele. Remember Denrele? The very first guest we had on Mindfully with Tumishe. And fun fact, I almost always run my podcast topics by someone just to get some other perspectives, and I'm not talking other people over your head when you're listening. And she had some perspectives to share, and I will share with you in a moment. And the two stories that I watched are the House of God, if you've seen it on Netflix. And after watching House of God, I was talking with someone and I said, okay, you know what? Let me watch Efunsetan. So this episode is really about the mental health story that is underlining in Efunsetan's story. And Denrele's perspective is coming from the Efunsete story, Iyalode of Ibadan. If you knew that story, if you grew up on such stories as I did, this story or this episode will resonate with you. But first, let's listen to what Denrele thought or said or her perspective when I shared my thoughts about Efunsete and even watching the House of God with her. I'll be right back.
One of the things I'm curious about her is her childhood. While I was in the bathroom, it just occurred to me. I wonder what her childhood was like, because nobody develops this kind of, psychotic and sociopathic tendencies from birth. We can't dispute that there could have been a little bit of the hereditary gene that could have passed on to her somewhere along the line. But there are things that must have happened in her childhood, and there are things she had seen that may have deposited some of these traits in her. So those are the questions that we won't probably have answered, because we don't have access to that kind of information currently. But hey, knowing who we are and knowing the kind of grace that we have enjoyed, we can offer grace to people like that too. Except that the disaster and the chaos that they created is way more than what a lot of us did. Some of us got involved in self-harm as a way of internalizing our own trauma. But they not only harmed themselves, they harmed a whole lot of people. So that's what makes it painful in understanding where they're coming from, the kind of hurt and damage that it caused to the lives of other people. Exactly. Perhaps God saved the daughter from generational trauma. These things. Mother would never be, her parenting skills would be very dodgy. So there's no way she'll be able to raise her daughter to be healthy if she's coming from a place of that much trauma. And even if you get to find the account of her childhood, how are you sure it would be accurate? Because sometimes posterity accounts like that, because they happened a very long time ago, particularly in the time when we had a very patriarchal society, and the people documenting might be men. Even if someone was messing with her, or her father was very abusive, or her father was a king that was extremely violent, how we sure would get the full details of the things she witnessed or the things she experienced personally? So those are the accuracy challenges that are ahead. Let me give you an example. About 3 or 4 days ago, an incident happened in the US. A young girl, an 8-year-old, her name is Queen or something. She's African American, and she shot her gym instructor, her gym teacher, to death in school. And I came across the story, and when I was reading the account, the first few paragraphs I read, before I even heard why she did it, I just read, that she claimed that the moment I started reading, an 8-year-old and everything, red flags just started going off in my head, that and gym instructor, the gym teacher, is a man. So red flags just started going off, that why would an 8-year-old girl shoot her teacher? And it was the only casualty of her shooting. So it wasn't like a school shooting, mass shooting thing. And so I started reading, and it said, that she claimed that the guy had been touching her. And of course, that was my first thought. But again, because I'm coming from a place of trauma too, I knew that my trauma might be speaking even if it's not the fact. So I said, okay, let me read further. And then I read further, and it says, that the guy, the camera, the CCTV in school captured when the guy led her away from her other classmates during gym session and took her to his office. So they now said, that it's been showing that apparently there's CCTV proof and record that he does that on a consistent basis, that he's always taking her away. So in my head now, now it's the girl's word against his, because he's dead. So she's the only living witness to that incident, and it's now her saying this is what was happening. But the district has charged her parents to court because obviously she's a minor, and then she had access to a gun, so they're holding the parents responsible. We don't know what the outcome will be, but it was just crazy because it's like, if there's a pattern that a male teacher is leading a young girl away every time during gym session, shouldn't that draw to question that what was going on in that office? But some of his colleagues are already saying, oh, he was a very nice man, he couldn't have possibly done what she said he's done. And I want to bet he's a white man and this is a black girl, so the racial divide is also going to play up. So it's so crazy. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, if the account is not, if this injustice prevails and we cannot get a full account of what happened, when the story is being told, it depends on who is narrating it. You're going to hear different accounts, and so it depends on which one you run into in posterity. That would now tell you that, oh, his family might believe, oh, he was killed unjustly. But other people, the girl's family might think, oh, okay, yeah, our daughter did this because this was what was happening to her. So, yeah, that's the kind of accounts that we get to read. And we have to now, navigate the fine lines between both. And sometimes we just can't get it right because we don't know all the facts.
Thank you, Denrele, for those words. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I want to try to navigate the fine line of Efunseta's story. If you're waiting for my side of that conversation, I was typing and she was sending voice notes. And I'm grateful that she sent voice notes because it's going to give this some meat and some flesh first. Like I said, the movie that sparks the journey to where I am right now, that made me look into Efunseta, was The House of God. If you're Yoruba, you know the story of Bashanruga, and of course, you know that the story that was told to you was how fierce and how formidable he was. And then I decided to look up Efunsete Aniwura, the Iyalode of Ibadan on YouTube. Now, let me give you some background. Like I said, my father made sure I and my brothers understood the stories of great men and women from the Yoruba culture. I have always been steeped in these tales. So he wanted us to understand the stock that we came from. So stories like those of Morimi Ajansoro, Bashanruga, and of course Efunsete that I'm trying to do a form of expose on today were part of my upbringing. And until recently, I must tell you that I always saw these two figures, that is Bashanruga and Efunsete Aniwura, the Iyalode of Ibadan, as tragic heroes. They were feared, and for good reason. They were feared. Watching The House of God, though, and seeing how God's brother was brutally killed before his eyes, I finally understood why he became so formidable. Remember our stories of origin, yeah? Dead. I was telling my brother from across the pond in the US, Dimitri, I've spoken about him on the show quite often, about Efunsete Aniwura as we discussed the House of God. And I went on about how brutal she was. I've watched almost every portrayal and interpretation of Iyalode of Ibadan. But it wasn't until I saw that movie about 3 weeks ago that I really saw her. It doesn't excuse her actions, no. But I was able to see her with grace. And that was what Denrele was referring to when she was saying that, yes, we know now and then we can extend grace. Her power and wealth only fed the anger, the pain, the loneliness, and the grief she couldn't navigate or find a space to heal. This, my friends, is the consequence of what our mental health, being non-existent institution is. While I know, just like Denrele said in those messages that you heard, that some truths about these stories might have been altered over generations, while watching Efunsete Aniwura again with the eyes of my new calling gave me a pause. This particular portrayal showed her as a powerful, yes, and a slave owner and trader. Yes, that wasn't taken out of it because we all know that was what she was, but also a kind one. That was what I missed when I was younger, right? That she was a kind slave owner and trader. Again, I am not trying to speak for her or to speak to slave trading or to dismiss the effect and the consequences of slave trade to Africans and Nigerians. No, that is not what I'm trying to do. I'm only trying to get to the bottom of the story of her origin to see why, to understand why she made statements like, if I heard any child cry, or the most poignant one she said to God, if you watch it, you will see, she said to God in that interpretation, watch though, that's I have famous line that, you do you, God, in heaven, and I'll do me here on earth. Efunsete Aniwura had an only daughter who died during childbirth, taking her grandchild with her. This event, I believe, broke Efunsete, and that was how it was depicted in that version that I watched on YouTube. You can look for it, and birthed the dictator that she became. There are stories that say she was married multiple times from a rich family and eventually had a child. But after the death of that child and her grandchild, her actions changed. She said no cries of babies were allowed near her, no slaves were allowed to have children, leading to the death of many pregnant slaves. Efushetel's behavior could have been as a manifestation of the unresolved grief and possibly mental health issues like depression and, of course, post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I know that we want to leave our heroes as heroes and see them as what they are, but they always have a frailty. The question is understanding that frailty and what birthed it. Our actions might have been, well, coping mechanism, albeit very destructive, a destructive one, to manage her pain and emotional turmoil in a time when mental health wasn't understood or treated. Because you know it, even now, and that is where it stems from. We joke about Yaba lefts, we joke about Arrow, we joke about people who seem to be behaving out of the normal, especially among women. You know, her experiences went unaddressed, leading to her harsh disposition. And it was very dear to me because I know for a fact that I suffered through or navigated through postnatal depression. So I couldn't imagine, this is someone who's lost her husband when she was young, and then the child that she had for the man now dies at childbirth. It was much, and there was no way, there was no room, there was no institution for her to let go, to deal, to connect with. So, her coping mechanism, like I said earlier, though destructive, was was all that we hear about the formidable Iyalode of Ibadan, Efunsete Aniwura. So why did I do so deep? Because we must continue to advocate for appropriate and robust conversations around mental health. We must. I do not have to look too far that many of us have the same responses as Efunsete had. Maybe not as dire, but we do, based on not having the tools to identify properly and label appropriately our emotions and feelings. This is the topic Ola and I have promised we'll get back to, but we've not been able to. I, Uluwatumishi, am not advocating for a life without battles. Hell no, it's going to be boring, but You must have battles. Battles will make the victories more interesting and sweet. But I am advocating that we become aware enough to sit with our pain and be trauma wise rather than being trauma foolish. Grief is one mental health issue that is grossly misunderstood. Many don't know how to respond or navigate grief, myself included. Efunsete Aniwura's story is a poignant reminder of how personal loss and grief can profoundly impact us and influence our actions and legacy. Her life is a testament to the complexities of human behavior and the enduring consequences of unresolved trauma. Right? We must constantly sit with ourselves. It is not beautiful, it is not easy, because the dirty ones, the bad news, the dirty news about ourselves is easier to believe. But you see, working through that suit, walking through that suit is what will get you to a place where you can manage to the barest minimum the consequences of all that this trauma will bring or has brought to your life. And I know that the terms trauma, depression are thrown at everything these days and even makes it much more difficult for those who are trying to advocate for a cleaner conversation around mental health questions to get the message through. But it is true. If you do not deal with the big trauma and the small trauma, it would definitely impact on your life's legacy and your living. As I've said recently, the best gift, if you have children already, you're planning to have children, or maybe not. But the best gift you could give a parent could give to their child is the gift of their healed self. And that's it for today. Remember that your mental health matters. And do not forget to follow Mindfully with Tumiche on Instagram and on X and Threads as we rile up the 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 train of a fight for life. Yeah, which comes up November 23, 2024. Registration opens this week. Registration opens this week. Yes, it's a paid event, but trust me, it is extremely affordable. Is extremely affordable. So stay with Mindfully with Tumiche on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, on Threads, right? For details on how to be part of this campaign. This campaign is very, very dear to my heart. Imagine an event where you are allowed to connect with your inner self and your inner child, where you are provided tools to play and introduced to fundamental mindfulness techniques, to stress management and emotional regulation. And yes, it's only for men for now. Right. So follow us on Mindfully to Miche on all platforms. And of course, you can send a text. The link is just below the description. Send a text and we will definitely get back to you. My name is Oluwatumishi Oladapo Kuku. Love yourself, love your neighbor, love your country. Above all of this, love God. He is the essence of your being. And there was no way I was going to round up this conversation playing without bringing back Asha's Moving On from the album Metal Stone, right? The song just captures everything I'm trying to say. And there's a line in the second stanza that says that she hopes that no one has to go through what she's gone through, all the stories that she had. We cannot stop it. We cannot stop anyone from going through things because life will always happen. But we are here. I'm here to hold your hands to make you understand that you are not alone. And your life is worth fighting for, even if it does not look like it right now. Until next time, stay curious, stay blessed, and love yourself.
I'm hoping for a better life, praying that nobody's story turns out like mine. The only thing I know is fear, even those with good intentions disappear. All that I could feel was pain, a stranger came and took my soul away. Like a deadly hurricane, I know my life will never be the same.